Today is an anniversary, a very special anniversary for us here in Wisconsin. So we're going to start out there because lawfare still continues in our country. It's horrible what happens to people who want to step forward and do really good things for their country or their state. And they find themselves first being intimidated, then being harassed and jailed and threatened, gagged. So 11 years today, at the crack of dawn, some folks, some really good friends of mine who are in this audience, had the beating of their door, lights, guns ablazing, coming in their house, ransacking all of their personal papers. They were gagged. They couldn't tell anybody that is what happened. All their family were terrorized for years before their items were returned to them. It still continues. So we have a very onerous government that tries to control us when we want to talk about our freedoms. So what do you say to people like that? I know President Trump has been experiencing that. We've seen Roger Stone. There's a lot of people that have been attacked. We've got lawyers that try to defend us that are also attacked. Also, some of those lawyers are in this room. So how do we get government pushed back in the proper place so that our freedoms are not taken away from us?
I remember that so vividly, what you're talking about, and what happened during the Walker administration. One of those things where I worked for a big company, TV company then, and it was one of those stories where like, what is this? You know, when you live in DC, things happen in the States, and you think to yourself, like, there's clearly something I'm missing. Like what happened in the last presidential election in Green Bay, for example. I was like, that can't really be what happened. I mean, that was totally fraudulent. Sorry, you know this. And the Walker thing was the first time I remember thinking, am I missing part of this? Is this just like fascism? It can't really be. It's Wisconsin, but it really was. And subsequently, I've had a number of friends go to prison. I have a friend in prison right now, Steve Bannon, for no reason, actually. And I could bore you with how it was unjust, but it is purely political. What would I say? Well, I have a lot of thoughts. I'll just make them super quick. One, the American Civil Liberties Union for 100 years, really from the First World War up until the Trump administration, was a left-wing organization, but it was a civil liberties organization. It was. And it would take cases defending Americans against violations of the Bill of Rights, and including right-wingers, because it had principle. Now it has no principle at all. It's just another organ on the left pushing the trans agenda. People who believe in the Bill of Rights, whether they're right, left, or center, it's mostly right, but it's not all, at all. Bobby Kennedy, is not or wasn't a right-winger. I don't know what he is now exactly. Well, he's a Trump surrogate now. There are elements of the left, the traditional left, who could make common cause. There was a huge rally on Sunday in Washington to illustrate this point, traditional left, traditional right, together to defend the country against totalitarianism. They need to form a replacement to the ACLU, a nonprofit where people whose civil liberties are being abridged, who are facing prison for saying their political views out loud, can go for legal representation. And the big firms, won't take these cases. As you know, the lawyers in the room know this well. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is much more personal. You cannot abide by a gag order. It's unconstitutional. They can't tell you can't talk. You have a First Amendment right to say your opinion, period. And don't abide by it. And if you need to go into hiding and continue to speak on X, which is really the last at-scale free meaning open media platform we have in the world, you should do that. You should never abide by a gag order. And I've had a number of friends facing prison who I've said this to, and they're like, well, you don't know what it's like to face prison. That's true. I'm sure I will if Kamala wins. But it's a matter of principle. It's a matter of, like, what kind of country do you want your children and grandchildren to live in? They cannot tell you can't give your political opinions, period, under any circumstances. And there's a judge in Washington called Amy Berman Jackson, full fascist, a Democratic partisan, but a totalitarian, who told Roger Stone that he couldn't explain what the government was doing to him because it would somehow bias the jury pool, Whereas, of course, federal prosecutors leaked his text messages to the New York Times. This happened to me. My text messages went up to the New York Times. Not to whine. But they're liars. They're not upholding a principle. They're taking away your God-given right, a right that you were born with, that the U.S. government exists to protect. The government did not grant you that right. It's inherent. You were born with it. That's what our founding documents say, and that's just true. Those are human rights. And first among them is the right to say what you think is true, period. And if anyone tries to take it away from you, you have to be willing to go to jail to uphold that right. That's just a fact. And by the way, if you're in that situation, you've already entered into the political arena, you have to be cognizant of the risks. If you can't handle that, don't enter. I'm sorry to be mean. I'm just being honest. Like, don't get involved if you're not willing to stand on principle to the end. You don't have to hurt anybody else, and you shouldn't. If you're a Christian, as I am, you should not hurt other people, period. But you have to be willing to be hurt if you're going to save the country. And the gag order stuff is just a really clear line. They have no right to do that. And if you allow them to do it, you're giving them the right to do it. You're establishing a precedent that your children are going to have to live with that will destroy this country. If the government can tell you you're not allowed to tell other people what the government is doing to you illegally, then we're done. Then we're just East Germany. So if you need to, hide out at a friend's house and tweet from your basement about what they're doing, do that. And enough people do that, this will end. But until they do that, it will continue. So the burden is on us to be brave. That's my opinion.
Again, it's the isolation that they want, right?
Oh, of course.
To keep you in fear.
I just spent the month of September, on the road. We went to 16 different cities, a speaking tour. And the main reason I did it, really the reason I did it, was I wanted to be in a room full of 10,000 people who believe in human freedom. I do. I just wanted that. And I wanted everyone else in the room to look around and be like, oh, I'm not crazy. There are other people here who want to live a totally normal life, who don't want to bring America back to the antebellum era. You want to bring it back to 1985. Not that long ago. Like, it was a free country. I lived here in 1985. I remember. I was dating the same girl in 1985. It was a free country. And it's not too much to ask to bring it back to 1985. That's not the Stone Ages. I don't care what they say. Oh, you're a Neanderthal. Really? 1985? I don't think so. We had way less racial tension in 1985 than we have now. You've brought it back to the Stone Ages, and you blamed us for it, as usual. No, people need to be willing to say, I was born in a free country, and I will do whatever it takes, short of violence. I'm not going to commit violence. I will be the victim of violence if that's what it takes. I will be, and I mean it. That's the only way it changes. If people are deadly serious about it, you cannot eliminate the Bill of Rights. I just won't stand for it. And unfortunately, we failed the test shamefully during COVID. We, meaning we failed. I failed. I mean, I didn't go along with, I never wore a mask or took their stupid shot, obviously. I didn't socially distance, obviously. But I should have been way more aggressive than I was. I should have gone on TV every night and said, totally disobey this. Totally what, are you even, what? They're telling you they're going to arrest you if you have a public protest? Go have the public protest and be arrested. Fill their jails. Fill their jails with dissidents, which is what you are. And I should have joined them myself. And I didn't, because I was living on my weird little island like, I don't want to deal with any of this stuff. You know what I mean? Have fun in your collapsing country. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed. I spoke up more than most people, but I didn't speak up enough. None of us did. And I just pray that if that happens again, they're like, oh, really, for your own safety, because we're now at war with Russia or we're at war with Iran. They're trying to start both those wars right now to strip our civil liberties from us, not because they care about those countries. It's about what they want to do to us. We're at war now. You're not allowed to say what you think. Well, I'm going to say it anyway. And I hope that every person in this room and every person you know will do exactly the same. Because again, it's not about us. It's about our children and the kind of country that they live in. And if you let them continue, if they do a COVID again and we act like sheep again, we're done.